The intellectual elite.
Intellectual elite.
Intellectual elite.
The intellectual elite. Know-it-all, academic, soy latte, vegan, complete the Saturday New York Times crossword puzzle, coastal, kale, intellectual elite. Why is intellectualism always equated with elitism? Maybe because in a time when facts don't matter and authority gets its strength from blind trust, knowledge isn't power, it's a problem. Maybe it's our puritanical roots, or maybe it's Fraser Crane. But Americans don't like intellectuals. That's why in American politics, not knowing much or appearing like you don't can be seen as a virtue. It shows that a politician is down to earth, relatable, someone you could have a beer with, or 5 beers with, or however many you had before you passed out and they drew it weighing on your forehead. Anti-intellectualism is what made someone from one of the most elite families who graduated from one of the most elite universities appear to be of the people.
To those of you who received honors, awards, and distinctions, I say well done. And to the C students, you too can be President of the United States.
And then one day a war criminal. And of course, back then, no one could have imagined a more grotesque celebration of hawkish anti-intellectualism until the primaries of 2016.
We won with young, we won with old, we won with highly educated, we won with poorly educated. I love the poorly educated. We're the smartest people, we're the most loyal people.
And that's just it. Trump loves the poorly educated because they're loyal. Just like peasants, or beagles, or Eric. They don't know any better. The less educated you are, the less capacity you have to think for yourself. And the less capacity to think for yourself, the easier it is to blindly place your trust in authority. And Trump was right to love the poorly educated because he went on to win the election in large part thanks to voters without a college education. He vastly outperformed Clinton in the 50 least educated counties in the country, where people might not have minded a president who literally speaks at a 4th grade level. Trump's lack of adult vocabulary, or coherence, is part of the Republican brand, though, to distance themselves from the elite classes they are indeed a part of in order to gain the trust of the general public, who they ultimately plan to f*** over. And it's been happening for decades.
This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Yeah, don't trust anyone who knows what they're doing. Trust the guy from Bedtime for Bonzo, whose brilliant economic plan is just his name with nomics on the end. And hear how Paul Ryan peddles the same anti-intellectualism today.
We do not believe that we should be governed by elites. We do not believe that there are experts or elites who should steer us in their preferred direction.
So good to hear you support regular folks, Paul. I'm sure the Medicare for All iron worker Randy Bryce will appreciate your endorsement for Wisconsin's 1st district. Oh hey, isn't that your district? One way the right equates expert knowledge with elitism is by painting higher education as the enemy.
President Obama once said he wants everybody in America to go to college. What a snob.
Next, he'll want us all to have health care, and some of us don't want to have to wait 50 years to meet Jesus. But it's easy for the right to demonize higher education as elitist because college itself is so inaccessible. And instead of working to make it more accessible by lowering tuition and alleviating student debt, right-wingers make education even more expensive by gutting public schools in favor of expensive private ones. It's almost as if it's in some people's political interest to keep people poorly educated. I just described Betsy DeVos's job. Meanwhile, the GOP continues to parrot down-home working-class solidarity, which is mostly crap. For instance, that lunch that Santorum was speaking at was for Americans for Prosperity, the nonprofit group of libertarian Sith Lord billionaires, the Koch brothers, a group that regularly supports union busing and is vehemently against raising the minimum wage. Feel the solidarity. But please, go on, Rick.
They're good, decent men and women who go out and work hard every day and put their skills to test that aren't taught by some liberal college professor and trying to indoctrinate them.
And that, right there, is the second prong to the right's anti-intellectualism, painting higher education not just as elitist, but liberal.
Many universities are becoming bastions of liberal bias rather than institutions for higher learning.
There's a bias in favor of liberal points of view on campuses that are run by government.
It's a joke that these elite universities claim to be bastions of academic freedom when really they're only bastions of political correctness.
Yeah, to the right, universities are bastions of political correctness because there are lessons on the French Revolution, gender studies, and consent. So it's no wonder that after all this bashing of college, 1 out of 3 Americans now thinks that higher education does more harm than good. Also, 1 in 4 Americans believes the sun revolves around the earth, which probably means 2 out of 3 Americans think college gives you skin cancer. And it is true that adults that are more highly educated have more so-called liberal thoughts on social issues and the environment. Things like climate change is real and universal healthcare will help people, and other ideological nonsense also known as facts. But the right combats these realities taught in universities by dismissing them all as simply overly sensitive political correctness that discriminates against conservative viewpoints. Take Charlie Kirk. This 24-year-old runs a group called Turning Point USA that professes so-called free speech on college campuses by, say, keeping a menacing list of liberal professors on its website. Listen to Kirk justify his campus crusade.
Look, a university is supposed to be a place where disagreement, the free flow of ideas happen, where people can say, I respect your opinion, but I respectfully disagree. Universities are no longer those places.
Time out. Charlie Kirk never actually went to college. Why would he? He's on Fox. Time in.
They are really islands of totalitarianism, where if you disagree with the faculty, the professors, the administration, or the left-wing students on campus, you can't respectfully disagree. You will be silenced, you will be suppressed, and you will be called a racist.
Or, Charlie, you will be called a racist because it turns out your organization is pretty f***ing racist. The thing is, Turning Point USA does exactly what Kirk imagines liberal universities are doing: propaganda. He admits to taking money from fossil fuel interests and then working against fossil fuel divestment campaigns. In fact, the right as a whole has had a way bigger hand in university education than they let on. Since the 60s, right-wing think tanks and private family foundations have poured billions into universities to promote free market thinking. There's the Olin Foundation, which started the conservative Madison program at Princeton and has supported right-wing ideologues from Samuel Muslims Can't Do Democracy Huntington to Dinesh Welfare is Slavery D'Souza. Or the Bradley Foundation and its support of gutting Wisconsin's education budget. But please, please, Charlie, tell me about liberal totalitarianism. For decades, 1%ers have worked hard to correct the liberal bias that comes with more knowledge, because they know that higher learning has been linked to beliefs in things like democracy, equality, deductive reasoning, and other stuff that makes you look at the Republican tax plan and go, wait a minute. They hate that higher education, despite their best efforts, does not turn you into a mindless worker bee with a malleable brain and nimble fingers with which to assemble the robots that are eventually going to take your job assembling robots until one day you wake up and go, hey, how come all the immigrants are taking my robot assembling robots jobs? Now listen. Call me a New York Times crossword puzzle, soy, kale, coastal, Frasier, kale, elitist intellectual if you want. All I have is a bachelor's degree, a bunch of books I haven't read on my shelf, and my spirit animal is Cardi B. It doesn't take a genius to realize that the plan to simultaneously defund and then delegitimize education is a way to keep us all very dumb. To keep us shopping on credit, blaming immigrants, and hailing the biggest anti-intellectual of them all. So maybe stay in school and stay woke. Can I still say woke in 2018? Hey everyone, thanks for watching Newsbroke. I'm Francesca Fiorentini. Please follow me on Twitter and let us know what you think about this allergy to intellectualism that Americans often have. Where does it come from? And how does it play out in your life and maybe in college? Are you in school or not? Also, why is it that people who have a college education are automatically pitted against people who don't have a college education? Shouldn't we just help everyone and actually, raise the minimum wage? Make sure that college-educated people aren't just baristas. Not that there's anything wrong with being a barista. I don't know. Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.